Hello and welcome to another episode, and welcome to the fabulous MG ZS EV. This is an MG owned car and we've got it for 5 days, and we have to say we are very excited about that. The new MG ZS EV has been causing a bit of a stir in the EV world, and rightly so. It's great to look at. It is the only SUV sized EV available outside of Tesla. It's the cheapest battery owned EV in its own segment and many others. And you won't have to wait 18 months to get hold of one, like this Kia e-Niro, which is over £10,000 more expensive, although you do get a bigger battery and more range. The MG is potentially going to be a direct replacement for our Model S, so it's got some big shoes to fill. So I was very impressed when the 0 to 60 time came in 2 seconds quicker than its quoted specification. And then there's the handling and the overall feel on the road. I don't know what I was expecting, but both James and I were very impressed that a vehicle of this size and weight, 1.5 tonnes, can mirror the characteristics of a vehicle much smaller and lighter. And if you want get up and go, the MG will quite literally tear your socks off out of the junctions, whilst maintaining a smooth and comfortable ride. The lane departure warning, something I've missed for 3 years on our Model S, is a welcome addition to each of my wing mirrors. And the lane follow assist and adaptive cruise control, although not a Tesla autopilot equivalent, worked really well and certainly made motorway driving more relaxed. The reversing camera, which is a must-have, gave excellent vision in the day and at night. Onto the boot, which for any family is rather important, and the MG didn't let us down. Here you can see me doing my normal pushchair test, which I can confirm slipped into the boot nicely with room to spare. If you need to carry bigger items, you can remove the parcel shelf, drop the 60/40 rear folding seats, alter the 2-level boot floor, and you can fit 5'10" in the back, no problem. Lift the boot floor and all this can be removed and replaced with an actual spare wheel. The battery pack, which is bolted to the base of the car, can be removed and stripped to module level within an hour. But you shouldn't need to worry about that, you've got a 7-year warranty. Under the bonnet, you get 353 Nm of torque and nearly 150 brake horsepower. A genuine concern of mine was halogen projector headlights, but I need not have worried. I found these as good as any other headlights I've previously used. Now, as you know, the MG ZS is Chinese, and a lot of people have a hang-up about that because they think it's going to be rubbish. But you have a listen to this. Our Tesla doesn't even shut that well. There's been a lot of discussion about the functionality of the charge port. I have to say I'm not its biggest fan, but it is what it is. And it works. At home on a 7 kilowatt charger, you're looking at 6 hours from 0 to 100%. Or on a high-powered CCS charger, to 80%, you should be able to charge in 25 minutes. And if you plug into one of these, you should be able to charge at up to 77 kilowatts. However, on this occasion, we saw a whisker under 55. We haven't even got inside the car yet, but when you do, you get keyless entry and auto-folding mirrors as standard. And you won't be disappointed when you are finally in the driver's seat. It's easily on par with competitor vehicles and in many cases a lot better. It's genuinely a nice place to be. There's no reach adjustment, but there is rake. However, the driver's seat is electrically adjustable. The one thing I am going to miss, there's no lumbar support, and that is something I use a lot. Headroom is excellent, especially with the sky roof. 6'5", you'd have no problem in here. Head and leg room in the back is excellent. Storage inside is good. 3 bottles in the driver's bin, no problems, and a further 2 in the rear. You can also get 4 in the glove box and 2 more in the centre cup holders, so you're definitely not going to go thirsty. I found overall that everything seems to be well thought out and rather sensible. Android Auto worked okay, but historically has been substandard to Apple CarPlay on every vehicle we have ever tested. And when we did test Apple CarPlay, as expected, it worked faultlessly and the transitions were seamless. The stereo, initially I was underwhelmed, but by the time I took the MG back, I'd set it up in a way The fantastic sky roof fitted to the exclusive model is absolutely amazing, and I'm really not sure how I survived this long without one. This feature alone had Florence sold on the new MG in about 5 minutes, and I wasn't far behind. We've been really fortunate to have the MG for 5 days, and this is the last day. I've had the car for the last couple of days and I've been using it for work, and it's been fantastic. I did some really good miles in it and I was very surprised by the efficiency. I've been driving it in eco mode. There's 3 modes. There's sport mode, there's a normal mode, and there's eco mode. Personally, I find that the sports mode is a little bit too pokey. Not everybody will find that, I presume, but for me, it was almost a little bit jerky, and it wasn't a relaxing drive. I tried it in normal mode and that's a lot better, but still, again, it still feels a little bit too pokey. But in eco mode, it's a smooth drive, it's really relaxed, and it's very efficient. On the little dial just down here on the dash, it tells you how efficient you're being. So it's set into different sections. You've got the section where it shows you it's charging, when you're regenning or braking. You've got the section which shows you when you're driving most efficiently, which obviously is going to maintain your range better. And then the last very end section is something that's called boost. And if you put your foot down in whatever mode you're in, it doesn't matter if it's eco, normal or sports mode, when it hits that yellow section, it really does give you a boost. It's a fast car and it's really impressive considering it's an SUV. I think at the traffic lights Grand Prix, as James calls it, it really is nippy. It's got some serious torque, again, regardless of what mode that you're in. Our Tesla obviously has an enormous amount of brake horsepower, and it's something that I enjoy occasionally, like putting my foot down, but I wouldn't say that this feels overly different. I mean, obviously there's a difference in brake horsepower, but the torque really gives it that feeling of speed, that nippiness that you want when you're trying to pull round something or get off the lights. The other excellent thing that I found over the last few days is getting Florence in and out the car. I mean, I've been putting in and out the Tesla, and we've mentioned in our previous videos that that's something that's not been that easy, and I have got a bit of a bad back, probably from carting her around. She's 2 years old now, but also getting her in and out of the car. And this in the MG is much easier. It's got a really high floor, so getting her in and out of the seat, just lifting her in and out is brilliant. She absolutely loves the car. On that note, I think because of the roof, she very much likes the roof. She can see the rain, she can see the sun if it's dark, she can see the stars. It really does add a bit of a level of entertainment for a 2-year-old. And getting her stuff into the car. I mean, Florence comes with a lot of stuff. We did the Pushchair Test and it fitted really well. The boot has 2 floor heights, and we tried it on both, and both fitted fine. I think if we were going anywhere on holiday, or we needed to take more than just the pushchair, we definitely have to use the lower height so we can fit all of the rest of our stuff in. I think the 2 heights of the floor in the boot is because if you want to just be able to get things in and out quickly, you don't want to have to be stooping to lift things in and out. Obviously you'd use the upper floor height, but for the extra space, the lower one. The boot space, just generally, compared to other cars a similar size to this, is really fantastic. We tested the e-Niro and the Kona, and both of them have got quite a small boot, which was a real downside, especially when you are using it as a family car. And you don't compromise on space in the back either. Even though it's got that big boot, you're not losing space in the back. The leg and headroom is absolutely brilliant in the back. James really struggles in the Tesla. When he sits in the back, he finds that his head is nearly touching the roof. He's got some friends that are over 6 foot tall, and they found it really, really good too. So the MG is the car that James wants to replace our Tesla. For me, I took some convincing to have the Tesla. Wasn't really that bothered. Now I've got it, absolutely love it. The drive of it, just the feeling of being in it, the way it looks, everything about it, I love it. So it is tricky because the MG is a nice looking car. Exterior is lovely, the interior is nice, but it doesn't have that same feel as our Model S. So it's something, and I know people are going to say you shouldn't compare the 2 cars, they're completely different leagues, and yes they are, and I'm not comparing them in that respect. I'm comparing them in a way that, in a personal way, in the fact that we're going to be looking at replacing one car with another. After driving it for a couple of days, I can honestly say that I'd be happy to have this as my daily car. It works really well practically, it drives nicely, it's still nippy, it still looks nice. There's a couple of things that I'm not so keen on. Everybody knows that I go on about seats and comfort, but that's a big thing for me because in my daily work I do drive quite a lot and we do some long distances every now and then. The seats do lack lumbar support. Now, somebody suggested that I maybe look at buying a lumbar support cushion, but in all honesty that's something that my grandma would probably do, so I'm not overly keen on that. It's almost like rolling up a cushion and sticking it behind your back like your grandma or granddad would have done in the past, so that's something I'll miss. But overall the seats are comfortable, they're not uncomfortable. They don't have that same level of support that you get on the sides like you do with the really sporty seats. You don't feel quite so enclosed, I suppose, but they're not bad. No numb bum as yet. The interior is really nice, ergonomically it's laid out well. The one thing I will say is I've never been a fan of buttons on steering wheels, lots and lots of buttons. The MG has 14 buttons on the steering wheel, which I still haven't mastered, but that will take some time. I've been used to having 2, so it's a bit different. Obviously the Tesla's very minimalistic with its buttons, and this isn't. So that might just take a bit of getting used to, but you know, it's not a big deal. There's a couple of other downsides that we found. One is the brake hold. So when you're sitting on a hill, you can press the brake and it holds it on the hill without you having to keep your foot on the brake. On our Model S, it's absolutely brilliant. You put your foot on and it holds it, and then you put your foot on the accelerator and the car just takes off. On the MG, there seems to be a bit of a delay. So when you go to accelerate, to pull off from the lights, it's almost like, feels like it's pulling you back before it then goes forwards. And it's not horrendous, but it is noticeable. And we're wondering if that might be something, you know, it's because it's pre-production, whether that will be mapped and sorted out. So fingers crossed, fingers crossed. We mentioned in our introduction the charge port, and I think there's been a lot of discussion about this on social media and just about the practicality of it really. You push the MG badge and it lifts up, and then underneath you remove 2 rubber covers and then you can plug the car into charge. You can't see the charge port unless you bend down or you squat to be able to plug it in. I did manage it actually yesterday just by feeling around and managing to do it. So that's it's a bit impractical, but it's not something that would make me not have the car. The one thing me and James discussed is whether they could perhaps put a light in there, because if you're plugging it in the dark, it's quite tricky to find the charge port. So hopefully that might be something they can do. The other thing we've both noticed, and it's a bit strange, is that in the wing mirrors you can see a reflection of the air vents. And like James said, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. It's really strange. And I think James was saying he thinks that if they're painted black, you probably wouldn't get that reflection. So it could be easily solved, but it's quite irritating. So just going back to the interior, if we think back to our Leaf, which was our first electric car, for me that was the most luxurious car I've probably ever owned after coming from a Clio. And I loved the interior of the Leaf, and I think this is comparable with that. The Zoe, which is our other car that we own at the moment, the MG is definitely better than the Zoe. But obviously the MG is more expensive. The Tesla, I don't think the interior really is good enough for the price that you're paying for a Tesla. If you're paying over £60,000 for a car, you'd expect it to be absolutely top notch, and it isn't. Whereas you're getting a pretty decent interior with the MG, and it's only £23,000. I'm used to the Tesla, which is a low base car, so when you're driving, you're going around corners, you feel like sort of more in touch with the road, I guess. You feel much more stuck to the road. Whereas with the MG, you're in a much higher driving position. So it is a different drive, but it still handles really well on little windy roads. And you know, I've tried my best to really test it, and it drives fantastically. Especially for an SUV, you wouldn't expect it to handle quite as well as it does. On the Tesla, we've got a stalk gear selector, which I've got really used to and I do like. On the MG, you've got the twisty gear selector on the centre console, which is fine. It's something different. I've not had any problems with it. It works smoothly, so no issues really. There's some really good features on the MG which I personally haven't had a lot of chance to use. James has done some motorway driving and he found them really good. Things like the auto steer, the adaptive cruise, that kind of thing, fantastic features. The one thing that I didn't quite like was the lane keep assist, and I have turned it off just purely because I don't feel like I need it, and I didn't like the feeling of it, the way it was dragging me around the road. But a lot of cars have that now. We had it on the e-Niro, turned it off. Can't think what else we've had it on, but generally I've always turned it off. I think the overriding thing here for me and for James is the fact that the MG is £23,000, and that is the top range model with pretty much everything that you can get, and the Tesla is over £60,000. So the money saving is huge. This is the best value electric vehicle I think that we've ever driven. So the overriding question here that James will probably want me to answer is, are we going to replace our Tesla Model S with an MG? And I think probably yes. And it's hard for me to say because of my passion for the Tesla Model S, but it just makes sense. This is going to save us so much money. Yes, we're going to be losing 60 miles of range, and we're probably going to have to change the amount of times that we charge per week. So yes, James, you've won again. We'll be getting one of these. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Twitter @KatePhantom, and we'll see you again soon with another episode. Since recording this, we've been made aware that the MG will have no app support as it does in other markets. However, all is not lost. We have it on good authority that an aftermarket device can be fitted that should give the same functionality. Another question we were asked was about the lack of heat pump. James tested the internal PTC heater and found that with average use, it will use 3 miles of range per hour. So, not all that bad.